Hi everyone, I'm Sasha. I'm a growth manager at Google working with some of the fintech apps in India. Welcome to day two of the Google FinTech Summit 2021. I'm hoping you had an enriching and productive session yesterday. We also uploaded a few resources for building brand, which will help you answer some of the important questions like how do I build a brand effectively and how do app advertisers utilize platforms to accelerate brand performance. You'll find all of these resources in the resource tab of the website, and you can have a look at this after the session. Now, today, let's start the day with a fun quiz on Kahoot. Please log on to kahoot.it and input the code that you'll see on the screen here. Also, I'd request you all to register with your name and company name. We have some exciting gifts for the winners, which you wouldn't want to miss out on. So all of you can see the game pin there. The quiz is a short quiz to figure out, understand how much you remember from yesterday's session and what your takeaways from today's session could be. So we have about 20 people live right now who join this website, kahoot.it, and see the game pin, which is 2619602 on your screen. And let us know in chat if you're facing any issues signing up. I see we're waiting for people to join in. Yes, we have Aditya, Vineet. We have about 20 people on call. So we're just going to wait for everyone to join in a bit. Are we facing issues signing up to kahoot.it? Three people. Someone's named themselves Kahoot. Please put your company names as well so we know who to send the gifts to if you guys win. If you can just go and put your company names as well. So, Rohan, whichever company you're from, we won't be able to identify the winners if we don't have the company names. Okay, seven people. All right, we'll just start in a bit. Let a few more folks join in. And thank you to all of you for making it at the start. Okay, we have people dropping off now. Just be a little bit patient with us, and we'll start in like another 30 seconds as more people join in. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yes, Alan, thank you so much. Alan's here from Avail Finance. Can we have a few more people join in with your name and your company name, please? Thank you, Ankit. We have some time while people are joining in. If the rest of you want to go back and put in your company names, that will also be helpful. So join with your name and your company name. Hey, Swati. Let's wait for another 30 seconds and then we can kickstart. All right. Thank you, Pulkit. Hope people are dropping off to go and put their company names. So let's just wait for another, I think, 30 to 40 seconds for people to join back. Yeah, I think they're doing that. Thank you, Mohit. All right. Akshay 2. I'm guessing that's not the name of your company. Okay, let's reach at least at 10 count and then we can kickstart this. Welcome, Dia. You all have an opportunity to win some exciting quizzes today. Okay, we have Vineet as well. Should we start? We have about 10 people now. I think we can start. Awesome. So the first question is, and you all have only 30 seconds to answer this. So fastest fingers first. What percentage of users forget about an app after they have installed it? Is it 75, 60%, 45%, or 82%? I actually don't even remember the last app I installed on my phone. I don't know about you guys. So, what do you think the answer is? 60, 82, 45, or 75? Last 10 seconds to get this right. Uh, All right, four, three, two, one. Let's see how many of us know this. Nobody got this right. Only one person selected 45%, but the right answer actually is 75%. So if you equate this to, the number, how much weightage we give to installs when we as marketers look at driving user acquisition, if 75% of them actually forget that they have their app on their phone, today we'll see how we can actually think about, re-engaging some of these consumers and getting them back into the funnel for our apps as well. But just keep this in mind, 75% is a huge number. And this is a number we need to keep in mind when we are making plans about user acquisition. So let's look at the next question. Okay, the second question is, what percentage of installs for finance apps today are non organic? Which means what percentage of installs are actually being driven by paid media? Is it 30%, 20%, 35%, or 50%? Fastest fingers first here. I saw Vineet was leading the board the last question. Let's see if that changes anytime now. All right. 20%. Most of you got this right. But yes, we have 20% of the app installs that are coming for fintech apps as non organic today. And this is what we heard in yesterday's session also. But you'll see Apps Flyer talking about all of these data points in the upcoming session today as well. And Vineet continues his lead. He's got both the answers right. So we need some quiz tracks coming your way, but let's see if the last question changes things. So can we have a look at the last question? On an average, users have these many finance apps installed on their phone. Is it three, six, seven, or five? How many apps do you think a user needs when it comes to financial services? And how many do they actually have installed on their phone? Is it three, six, seven, or five? Vineet, are you going to keep your lead? I'm excited to find that out. The right answer is five, and some of you got this correct as well. But this data point is actually super important. I mean, it blew my mind when I thought about it. Like, if you think about how many financial services do you need, one could be your banking app, one could probably be, your credit card app or your lending app. But why do I need five finance apps on my phone? It's something to think about, but this is the user behavior. And that's how much competition for fintech players is increasing today. And we'll touch upon that as well. So hold on, watch out for a lot more data coming your way. Let's see who won the Kahoot. Okay, the third place goes to Pulkit. Vikram is second. And Vineet, is that you? Yeah, Vineet, congratulations. We'll be sending you some cool swags your way. Thank you so much for playing. It was super fun to host you all. And now I'll hand over to Pranoti from the AppsFlyer team to share insights on the state of finance apps in India, followed by a couple of sessions from our product team, which will address all the three data points that we just spoke about during Kahoot. So over to you, Pranoti.
Hi everyone, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the state of finance in India. My name is Pranuti Pandey and I'm part of the AppsFlyer sales team. So we at AppsFlyer are committed to providing accurate, unbiased attribution data that you can trust. The agenda of today's presentation would be talking about the India fintech space and the challenges that the fintech apps have been facing in the Indian market. We would also be talking about the best practices in order to scale growth in developing markets like India and the Indian subcontinent. And we would be summarizing a few key takeaways from our session that app marketers must definitely use. Financial app downloads have increased by 132% globally, partly driven by greater convenience, higher acceptance of mobile devices. This global surge for demand for fintech apps led marketers to invest to acquire new users. Now, mobile apps play a key role in digital transformation, especially in large mobile first or even mobile only developing markets. The fintech sector has experienced a rapid growth thanks to accelerated digital transformation. And COVID 19 also drove an increase in installs as people relied more on banking and investing from home. Plus, installs also surged mostly due to vaccine rollout. Now, app marketers are following suit. They understood the requirement of people, they uplifted their investments to meet the heightened demand. So while fintech apps have been constantly growing, year 2020 was an unexpected boon. Consumers today are beginning to realize the flexibility, the connectivity, the convenience provided by fintech apps. Increased penetration of internet and extensive use of smartphones have also, irrespective of age, class, and educational background, have also opened FinGate into tier 2 and tier 3 cities in India today and are making technology inclusion a reality. For example, companies like Paytm have released its app in regional languages because they understood that vernac content is the need of the hour to facilitate transactions from smaller cities. These companies have not only registered a massive surge in share of customers from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, but also got a huge segment of new users to transact digitally. But obviously, as we all know, no growth story is complete without its challenges. Okay, so over 60% of the finance app uninstalls that occur happen within the first day. And while the day 30 uninstall rates came down by 12% compared to 2020, user churn is still prevalent in India. From a marketing perspective, measuring uninstalls and understanding the why, when, and which media sources the uninstalls came from is essential for optimization and creating appropriate expectations and reducing the churn risk. From a product perspective, the prevalence of uninstall speaks to the need of ensuring a flawless onboarding experience of users. In today's times, it is hardly enough to bring the right users to your app. You must also set the stage early, creating higher chances of a quality engagement and ensuring the install to registration time is short. The user experience is great. Now, fortunately, more and more apps have recognized this and they are ensuring that proper targeting is done. They are measuring the uninstall metrics. But lockdowns, people staying at homes also mean consumers were also spoiled for choices and enough competition entered the market, hence the reason of churn in India. And the sheer number of finance apps in the Indian subcontinent is the highest globally, as we all know, which means the competition for installs is also higher, thereby leading to a very aggressive market in an effort to draw users' attention. And as a result, the share of non-organic installs that you see here of finance apps is high and therefore higher user acquisition cost. Now, fintech as we all know, fintech industry has experienced, a huge growth, a phenomenal growth in the past few years, not just in terms of the number of companies that are operating in this space and in the emergence of innovative business models such as peer-to-peer lending, cryptocurrencies, etc., but also fraught with opportunities. The trend has attracted the attention of investors as well as that of fraudsters who've come up with ingenious and innovative ways to con and make a quick buck. Now, high payouts and scale are the reason why the fintech industry has been attracting frauds in the Indian subcontinent, and app install fraud continues to hit the APAC countries, especially in Southeast Asia and India, with where the rates exceeded by 40%. Now, marketers have realized the severity of this threat and have fought back, and continued vigilance is still vital in today's times to continue the fights against fraud. Okay, so attributing your installs to the right sources and uh, attributing your installs to the right sources and measuring the right KPIs connect your marketing efforts to your business questions. Now, while user acquisition is just one part of the puzzle, re-engaging your users and protecting, marketing budgets against fraudsters is equally important. So let's dive into the details, starting with top half of the wheel, which is measurement. Measurement is really about attribution, which connects your marketing efforts to your business results. What we do at AppsFlyer is we take all the users who downloaded your app, we measure all the different ads and marketing touch points that they engaged in what specific order that caused them to convert. From there, we look at all the actions they take within the app and match those to the same user acquisition or a retargeting source. But since our origins, beyond mobile, we now measure email, TV, out of home, and crucially, that web to app connection that you can stitch the full journey from desktop to mobile. But of course, measurement is only actionable if it is connected. We spoke earlier about attributing multiple platforms and devices, but it is also important to note that we at AppsFlyer, we have nearly 9,500 plus integrated media and technology partners. But it's not just the breadth that matters here. It is also the depth and the quality of integration that we at AppsFlyer have. We've earned the trust of biggest players out there, which is why we're a certified measurement partner for Facebook, for Google, Apple, and all the biggest media sources. We are also invested deeply in our integrations with key marketing technology partners that you see on your right, making it easy to ingest AppsFlyer data into whatever tools that you're using now. Okay. So to make your experiences amazing, you have to personalize them. And that's where our audiences tool comes into picture. Audience starts with measurement. We encourage all our clients to measure deep and detailed in-app events because this gives you a wealth of options when it comes to segmentation. For acquisition, you can find users who are similar to those who are actively using your app. Similarly, if you want to customize messaging, perhaps by presenting prospects with a specified card offer, you can target users who are similar to already those who are using a card in your app. For re-engagement, it is crucial to optimize the onboarding experience within the first week of them installing your app, etc. From there, our APIs make it very easy to sync audiences into your paid media partners as well as other tools in your stack. So if you've already built audience segments in your marketing automation tool, AppsFlyer can ingest those audience, so you don't have to start from scratch. Okay, so if the marketer is savvy, they will use different parameters to run diverse campaigns. For lower value products, push and email makes complete sense because these channels are more or less free. Especially true in case of banking institutions. Apps are not, as in other verticals, primarily used as destinations to acquire new users. Instead, they're used to convert existing web or offline users to mobile users, improving the user experience, diversify user touchpoints available via funnel-based marketing segmentation and deep links. For high value products, marketers can remarket via paid media. Interestingly, despite their widespread use, many marketers are still not fully aware of the long term value these channels inevitably provide. Okay, so we looked at the share of paying users in two groups: those who run remarketing campaigns and those who don't. We found that in most markets, remarketing campaigns increases the share of paying users. We found that apps running remarketing campaigns had 90% higher share of paying users compared to those who don't. Remarketing in today's times is a necessity. Given that apps clearly see a higher share of paying users, it is evident that these campaigns directly and consistently support performance and profitability. And to boost fintech apps retention rate, it will be good to understand how these users are behaving in app. When are they returning and why? By drilling down into these retention rates, app marketers can troubleshoot onboarding issues, ascertain if there is sufficient content to keep the users engaged, and test the success of introductory offers. The importance of A/B testing and deep user understanding to create a well-rounded strategy, incorporating highly personalized campaigns, automation, and real-time measurement is more critical than before. Okay. So we all know measurement is only powerful if it is protected. One piece of this is security. Staying ahead of risk in an ever-evolving mobile ecosystem, is crucial to success of your business. Our platform at AppsFlyer is designed with security at its center, backed by a dedicated team of experts who are always working to ensure your data is protected. The other half of this is about accuracy. So, specifically protecting attribution from misattribution and fraud, for which we have a fraud protection tool which is called P360, which identifies and blocks real time fraud and post attribution fraud. Billions of dollars exposed, there is no slowing fraudsters. So proactively protecting your app against mobile fraud is an inevitable reality. So you might have a very high ROI campaign that may look really good in the short run, but actually you are misattributing fraudulent and organic users as paid users, which will eventually affect your ROI and lifetime value that these users are bringing in. Finally, I have a few key takeaways that I wanted to point out. First is effective attribution and measurement is equally important to ensure that marketers are spending money with the right media sources, which is driving a higher return on investment and a high lifetime value customers. Secondly, making data-led smart decisions and identifying the media source which is driving high quality users to your app, which are driving high LTV and optimize the campaigns accordingly. Thirdly, based on the insight that we have at AppsFlyer, that nearly 50 to 60% users who register during the first 30 days post and install do so on the first day, marketers really need to closely monitor the registration funnel performance and optimize the install to registration time in order to ensure that the install to registration time is slower. And last but not the least, and the most important point is fraud. So you need to invest in a fraud protection solution that, despite the considerable drop in the app install fraud rates, fraudsters are still ahead of the game. So it is vital for marketers to be equipped with the latest fraud prevention tools in today's times. That brings us to the end of the presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nadish, and I head our suite of performance solutions here at Google in India. Today, we're here to talk about remarketing or re-engagement and why it should be a core part of your digital marketing strategy. I think all of us know and are deeply aware of the fact that India is an app-first market. And as an app-first market, having your app on a user's device, consumer's device, makes all the difference in the world. And each of you invest a lot of time, energy behind making it happen, whether it is building a fantastic product or investing in marketing. But there's another reality to India. And that reality is that we are one of the highest uninstall rates in the world. And as we have these uninstall rates, not only do consumers uninstall, 50% of consumers who will uninstall your app do it on day one. They install your app, and within 24 hours, 50% of people who will uninstall do it the same day. And this is really the crux of thinking about re-engagement. At what point of time do you start? Do you actually start on day one when somebody's installed your app and is almost about to uninstall? Or do you start 90 days later when maybe they've not engaged with you enough? We know that this is an interesting stat that you see on the screen. And in the morning today, before getting on this call, I was going through my phone. And what was really surprising to me was that, first of all, I had more than 80 apps on my phone. Second, which was really the shocker, approximately 8 to 10 of them I don't ever remember installing. And therefore, I've never used them. Or maybe I used them so far back, I don't even remember why I installed. There were about 3 of them that I didn't even know what they did. Not just that, there were another 40 that I hadn't used in the last 30 days. I wonder what that stat is for each of you. If each of you were to pick up your own phone and go through it and really spend, a few minutes scrolling through the entire number of apps you have and try to guess how many of those you've used in the last 30 days or how many of those you don't even remember you had, those numbers will be astonishing. And this is just, 75% of smartphone users have forgotten that they have an app on their phone. Look, we all know this saying, a bird in hand is better than two in the bush. But what does it really mean, right? And we know that existing users are always going to deliver better value than any new customer we go after. So how do we make it real? And is there anything more that beyond this, generic statement we can go to? And I think this data from AppsFlyer is really telling. What it really says is that customers who you target with re-engagement campaigns actually drive 50% more revenue than those who are not. And not only that, we already know they have higher lifetime value. So there is very significant value in marketing to reaching users who already have your app but are not engaging with you at the level that you would like them to. And this data is just so stark that that becomes difficult to refute. And then the question becomes, how can you make the most of your app lifecycle today, here and now? And typically that starts with, can I acquire them? Once I've acquired them, what do I want them to do? Are they doing the action I want them to do, or are they doing something else? Or maybe they're not doing any action. How do I ensure that somebody who's engaged with me in the past and is a valuable user comes back to me today again? How do we ensure that we have multiple services and each of these customers are using all of those multiple services and not restricted to one or two? I think a lot of these questions we'll try and address over the next 15 to 20 minutes. And hopefully you'll exit this session with a clearer view of how you can use re-engagement within the app ecosystem. But really, I think I would be missing the boat if I did not call out the one thing each of you is thinking right now: push notifications. I think the standard go-to response for all of us as marketers when we think about reaching out to an existing app user is we can do it through push notifications. Why do we need anything else? And if we can't do it through push notifications, we have an SMS, maybe we have a call center, we have the ability to send an email. Why do I even need to do any sort of marketing when I have this fantastic opportunity to reach the user on their device with a notification? But I was personally very surprised by the stat that I'm going to show you next, is that 50% of people don't ever receive a push notification. I think it's worth restating this fact. 50% of people never receive a push notification. And I feel 50% is probably the outer limit because you can see the data for the various verticals here. In fact, most marketers think similarly. I think that's a given. A lot of us are smart. We think in the same way. And where it comes down to is you want to reach a customer or a consumer when they are free, in a moment where they are uncluttered in their mind. Generally, that's after work. So you'll see a lot of notifications going to consumers in between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. And that becomes a clutter zone for the device. And increasingly, smarter consumers who are starting to feel the burden of notifications are actually switching them off. Personally, I have switched off notifications for most of the apps on my device, other than those that I'm a frequent user of, other than those that I know I want to go to and review and look at on an ongoing basis. Could be news, could be a few e-com apps, but very limited portfolio. And pretty much for the rest of them, I've switched it off. And there could be many such consumers within your base as well. So you're never going to reach such people just by doing push notification. And that brings us to remarketing. And a lot of times we use these terms interchangeably, remarketing and re-engagement. But if you think about remarketing, it's been around for many, many years. And all of us as marketers have used it at some point of time in our digital journey. And all of us have been consumers of remarketing as well. About a year ago, roughly around the same time, a little earlier, I think around August or so last year, I was in the zone of saying, it's been work from home for a while, and I wanted a fresh wardrobe. And I was shifting from my shirt zone to my t-shirt zone in my work from home avatar. And what did I do? I started going to a few sites. My wife, who's my style consultant, sent me a few links saying this is what people who are working from home wear. I read those, but there was a lot going on at work. And so I flitted around here and there, read a little bit of content, but didn't take action. And what ended up happening was that this one particular brand, whose site I'd gone to and where I had actually added to cart a couple of items, remarketing to it. Lo and behold, followed me around, gave me the right message, gave me an interesting offer at the right time, and got me to convert. And that's what remarketing is all about. That's the magic of remarketing, right? That they knew I'm somebody who's in the market. They knew I've abandoned the cart and really wanted me to come back and make that purchase happen. And they did it through remarketing. This was largely on the web. I think the good news is that the same construct and concept is coming to apps, which is what app campaigns for engagement is all about. I'll talk about one or two examples of brands that have done it. Airtel Payments Bank saw 2.5 times return on investment when they invested with us on app campaigns for engagement. And this was significantly higher than any other channel. Not only that, I think they realized that the way the platform was delivering value across multiple channels within the Google ecosystem, it delivered a lot more than what they had gone in expecting. And I think this is something that has increasingly been an eye opener in so many of our conversations, that the outcome that is generated from re-engagement is a stark surprise for a lot of brands and businesses. Another international example, Garanti Bank is a bank in Turkey, and they wanted to increase engagement with users who hadn't signed up in the last 90 days or signed in the last 90 days. And as they started the re-engagement campaigns, not only did they see a significant bump up in sign-ins, but it started to deliver on their end transaction goals as well. And they saw a 60% increase in in-app events on the back of this activity. I think clearly this goes to show that just doing push notifications, just doing SMS and email, which they were already doing, this added significant value on top of it, and goes back to the same AppsFlyer report that when you remarket to customers, you get better value and higher return on investment. Now, just taking a step back, what does this mean, right? And what is the type of re-engagement we can deliver for various different types of marketers? And I think it starts right at the activation level. There are a large number of users who've installed your app, but haven't done the first action. Could be a sign up, could be a certain step that you want them to take within the journey, but they've not taken, which is really the first step to get started. And I feel that there will continue to be large sets of users in India who will install the app and not do the first action. The second is, how do you get them to come back and do the same action or frequency of action again and again? Some users will do this organically, but there will be another large chunk of users who will need to be reminded that whether it's a bill payment or anything else, you were supposed to do it, you've not done it. Then think about reactivation. Again, there are consumers who may have interacted with you 60, 90, 180 days ago, still have your app, but haven't come back to you. How do you get them back? How do you stop funnel drop-offs with remarketing? And really my favorite is cross-sell. What's for most of you, you will have multiple products that you want the consumer to use. But most consumers may be using only one or two of these. How do you intelligently use the understanding that you already have in your systems to cross sell and upsell when the consumer is not inside your app? I think all of you do it extremely well when the consumer is already inside the app. How do we translate that outside the app ecosystem? And how do we get them to come back and do a separate action from what they had done last time? And really, this is a view of engagement on the right hand side, how engaged a user is between left to right, and really your revenue from that user on a scale of mm, low means low revenue as you go up high revenue. And like any 2x2, you always want to be in the top right. And the top right here is an active paying customer, right? And this is somebody who's staying with you, coming back to you frequently, investing behind your channel, and giving you the right return and value. But if you just move down, they're active, but they're not really payers. So what can you do to incentivize them to be payers? You move further down, not engaged, bottom left, and not paying. I think this is an audience that is ripe for re-engagement. Really bring them back, not just get engagement going, but at some point of time, get them to buy as well. And then you have inactive, but had paid at some point of time. Again, a large number of people may have interacted with your brand, done a transaction, done an action 6 months, 7 months ago, and haven't come back since. How do you get them back? How do you get them the right incentives? I think we've covered the why and who to do remarketing to, but we've not really spoken about the how. And it's important to now spend a little bit of time on the how of remarketing. And that's where ACE comes in. And ACE is nothing other than app campaigns for engagement. So the small e is engagement. Google App Campaigns for engagement. And very similar to our app campaigns for installed product, ACE is driven by the power of machine learning, super easy to set up and manage, and drives amazing results. And it brings the breadth and power of Google solutions across Google Search, across our display and AdMob network, YouTube, and Play, and brings all of these solutions together seamlessly so that you as a marketer don't have to worry about how to reach a customer. The system figures out algorithmically through machine learning which user has a likelihood to take the action you want them to take through which platform. That's the magic of app campaigns for install, and in this case, app campaigns for engagement. Really, if you think about ACE and think about the guidelines to get started, there are some prerequisites. There are a few best practices, and there are some pro tips, which I'm going to give, as a small peek into how to really make the best of your investments here. So what are the prerequisites? I think there are very simple three prerequisites. You need to have a minimum install volume. I think that naturally stems from the fact that I need to have acquired a certain set of users before I can get into the re-engagement, remarketing conversation. In this case, we've kept that base at 250,000 installs. I think in the context of India, a lot of you would be significantly higher than that. So generally, this doesn't become a constraint. The second is having the ability to deep link to a specific section within your app. And this is a very critical part, because if you want consumers to take a certain action, take them to the place in the app that enables that action directly. We do allow going to the homepage, but generally, our strong recommendation is go to the right place within the app that will get the user to take the action you want them to take. And lastly, have the right conversion tracking in place. This starts with your own understanding of what is success and what you want the consumer to do, and then making sure that you're tracking that in the right way, whether it is with AAPs or with GA for Firebase. Let's come to best practices. And again, we've tried to keep this simple and Hopefully, feel free to reach out to your teams, ping on chat to know more. But really, 5 simple things. Send connector pings. Let the system know that it's working correctly. Let the system know that it's delivering on the value that you wanted to create. Because the machine can only deliver based on the inputs you give it. Put the right willingness to pay and set your campaign budgets rightly. Give it the right scale and opportunity to go after your consumers and bring them back. Bid for at least 100 plus conversions a week. Don't make it very, very niche. Our systems are able to deliver for pretty much any outcome. But if you're able to give it an event which at least happens 100 times a week, the ability for it to deliver and deliver at scale becomes that much more easier. Creatives. I think this is an area that a lot of us underinvest. And it's something that I would strongly urge each of you to deeply think about and build with the purpose of delivering an outcome. What are the interventions and stories you want to tell or inputs you want to give to consumers for them to come and engage with you and take the action you want them to take? And lastly, avoid mixed signals. Don't confuse signals and don't send multiple messages to the system and let it deliver the best it can on its own. Phew. So let's recap, right? There are some prerequisites, there's some best practices, there's some pro tips that I'm going to leave with this group. I think the first prerequisites, minimum installs, 250,000, make sure you're deep linked and do the right conversion tracking. Best practices, send your connector pings, make sure the campaign is set up correctly, you're sending the right number of bid signals, you have enough creatives and the right types of stories to tell, especially on video, and don't mix bidding. And lastly, pro tips, right? Choose a large enough audience pool. I think that's important. Don't be very, very niche, but go after the right set of users that you want to convert. And import all conversions into the Google system so that the system can learn and adapt and deliver to your goals. With time. So put on your thinking caps. We've spoken a lot. And I'm going to throw a few questions at you and let's see where we get. I hope you're ready for the first one. Which deep link type is not supported by ACE or app campaigns for engagement? A, custom schemes. B, app links. C, deferred deep links. And D, smart links. An interesting question. And the answers are deferred deep links and smart links are not supported by ACE. And that's because deferred deep links are meant for consumers who are installing an app and don't already have it. And smart links are redirection links that don't work on our systems, and we do not recommend usage of them. Question 2. Which audience list can be used for ACE? Auto-generated similar audiences list, A. All user lists from another app, C. Users who have reached a certain level in your app from an AAP or any other source like Firebase. Users' email lists who have registered through a manual upload. Which audience list can be used for ACE? The answer, users who have accomplished a certain level within your AAP as defined by your AAP or any other source like Firebase. I think the others were sort of, I think, clear that you can't use somebody else's audience list to run a remarketing campaign or a re-engagement campaign. Last question for the day. What is the minimum recommended audience size for ACE? So how large a list do you think you should start with so that the system has enough audience to go after across the various channels we exist on? Okay. And the answer is A, 100,000. This is the recommended scale of a bare minimum audience size that we want you to go with. 250,000 was the number of installs that you need to start on ACE campaigns. So yes, that is a little confusing, a little tricky, but hopefully you got that right and this was helpful. Okay, so how do you get started, right? Very simple. I think build an audience list. That's the starting point. Do you know who you want to go after? Do you want to go after somebody who's lapsed? Do you want to go after somebody who's done a transaction and you want them to do a different transaction? Do you want to go after somebody who's not been activated at all yet? I think about who this audience is and build that audience list. Build your assets to engage with that audience. Think of the audience, think of the success metric, think of the action you want them to take, and then build your assets for that audience group. Don't be very generic. Try to be specific on the action you want them to take. Decide on the conversion event and your bid, as I spoke about, and really measure success on Firebase or the AAP that you use. And use this as an iterative process to really build on your re-engagement strategy over the next few months and quarters. And I'm very excited to have all of you kick this off. This is an opportunity to really go after your existing customers, extract more value from them, increase their lifetime value, and really generate more profitability for the business from your existing customers. I'll go back to that old adage, bird in hand is worth two in the bush. Thank you so much for your time today. And I hope all of you had a good time and are going to stay with us for the next session. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miso. I'm an APEC measurement specialist. As a measurement specialist, I provide support around some of the tools that we can bring quality data to App Campaign to optimize, including Firebase. So today I will cover two sections. First, to touch on more on basics of Firebase, including how you can find user and marketing insights. And second section is to highlight on how Firebase can help on fintech businesses. So starting with the first session, I'm going to go over these agenda. First, the Firebase basics, and also to touch on Firebase versus the GA4 Dash. So some of you might be very new to GA4. So I'm going to introduce what it is and how they stand differently from the Firebase. And lastly, I'm going to give you some of the examples how you can find actionable insights from the GA4 dashboard. So moving on to the basics. So Firebase is not just the analytic platform. Under Firebase umbrella, we have 18 plus different features to help the app developers. So from app build to app release and monitor, and lastly, to engage the user to increase the user base. But today, we're going to focus more on the analytic side of the Firebase. To start with it, the basic concept to understand about Firebase are these four: the event, user properties, audience, and the predictions. The reason why I'm touching on this before we jump into the analytics is based on how you develop your event or the user properties and also the audience, that will impact on what kind of the data that you can see under GA4. So the event is something that you are more familiar with, especially if you work with third-party AAPs. So event can be any touch point that user make within the app, from app installs to registration, getting approval, or apply for specific fintech services. All those touch points can be events. And user property is a little bit unique for Firebase. So it's not directly linked to the event, but it will define the user characteristics, including like gender, age, geo, or some different membership level as you define. So event and user property has to be done on the implementation stage. But once you have that on the SDK, later in the utilization, marketers can build the user group, audience, or the prediction. I'm going to touch on how these audience and predictions are different in Firebase in a minute. So good thing about Firebase is just by having the SDK basic setup, you will have access to all these events and all these user properties. So even with the basic setup, you have some level of user insights. However, I always recommend each business to implement their custom events because all the businesses are very unique and they provide different features within the app. So Firebase offers some recommended events based on the app verticals, but you will have the unique event that you want to add in. One of the feature that I want to highlight is this parameter underneath event. So when you implement the event, you can also use the parameter, which is the additional information tagging underneath event. So for example, if there is the lead generation event, using parameter, you can specify what is the lead, and then how much was the lead, and what is the currency of the lead. So you think about parameter as basically like additional information tagging underneath event. And once you do that, it can be used under reporting. You can go down to parameter level to look at the reports. And also you can define the user at the parameter level. So instead of you generating the user who generate the lead, you can be very specific. The user who generate the lead more than X dollar. So by having this parameter, your definition of the audience can be very detailed. So speaking of the audience, Firebase offers two different types of user group. One is audience, the other is predictions. So how they are different. So audience is more familiar, more common way to define the users. And then it's all based on users' past behavior. So for example, if you want to target the user who will likely to convert to the payer, you always start with the assumptions. So if the user had a view but not yet paid, might be more likely to convert to payer. So you have this assumption to build the audience. However, for the prediction, instead of making the assumption, we're relying on the data modeling. So what this prediction feature does is analyzing each user's behavior and then build a model whether this user will convert to the payer or not in next 7 days. So using this prediction, we can engage with the user who will likely to convert to specific action in next 7 days. So it's more accurate way to define the user, and Firebase offer both of them. So again, in this basics, I quickly touch on what is event, what is user properties, and also audience and predictions. This can be used for the data analysis in the next section as well. So just keep that in mind. These are the basics. All right, moving to the Firebase and the GA4 dashboard. The first thing that I want to touch on is what are the difference. I never heard of GA4. So just speaking of the app analytic that Google offer. So as a core app analytic SDK, we offer Firebase SDK. So using Firebase SDK, we define those events or the user property that I mentioned. But once all the data is collected through this Firebase SDK, there are two different dashboards to show the data. The first one on the right is the Firebase dashboard, which might be more familiar to you. So this is part of the Firebase suite, and we have an analytic in it. And on the other hand is GA4. So some of you might heard of the Google Analytics for Web, which exists more than 10 years as a web analytics. So we are making some changes in the Google Analytics by adding this new feature, GA4, We also call it as GA for properties. So what GA4 does is adding the web data to app data so that the marketer or the app developers can have a more user level view, not just a platform level view, app web separately. So under GA platform, we now have this GA4 to show the app data as well. So in the future, we want to position GA4 as our core analytic platform for the marketers. And then, as I mentioned, the big vision for this platform is to have web users and app users combined view. And if you have the Firebase platform already implemented, you can simply activate the GA4 to deep dive on more detailed data. So with GA4, what you can do. So on the top of the Firebase data points that you can see, this provides much richer data reporting for your business. And also this is made more for the marketing perspectives. So if you look at this lifecycle dashboard setting, you can see it covers acquisitions to engagement, to monetization, to retention, which is basically the marketing funnel that you manage. And for each section, it provides a set of the reporting where you can find the user insights. And then the beauty of this reporting, it provides very handy way to compare different user segments. So if you look at this screenshot, you see 3 different color-coded reportings. So it's basically showing 3 different segment data sets. And then you can very easily compare which group of the segment is bringing different values. And also on the left-hand side, you see the build comparison. So on the dashboard level, you can define different segments using event or the user property, which I touched on earlier in this session. But later, I'm going to give you some of the example how you can leverage this so that you kind of get better idea on how to use this. And on the top of this predefined reporting, GA4 also offers this Explore menu. So this menu is basically the data visualization platform. So using your own data, you can see this different data template to utilize. So you use this template or you use this blank template to build the dashboard or the data points that you want to build. So it's very easy drag and drop type of the utilizations. So see on this left-hand side panel, you can see different dimensions or metrics. So you can just drag and drop to build your reportings. I'll also show some of the example in the next sections. So I quickly cover what is GA4 and what value this dashboard offer to you. And then on the last section, I'm going to touch quickly on how you can utilize the GA4 dash to find some actionable insights. I prepared these 3 use cases. However, it's not just limited to only these 3 use cases. You can come up with your own utilization way to do so. But I'm just giving some ideas. So first, to understand LTV. And second is to check the new user contribution, especially for the marketers who spend marketing budgets to acquire user. You want to show those users that you acquire are actually valuable to the business. So that's something that you want to show. So this dashboard can help you do so. And lastly, you can go down to more Google channel and Google campaign level deep dive. So I'm going to jump into each of them. So under understanding LTV use case, the business question might be, I want to increase the overall LTV of the app, but not sure which group of the users is valuable to invest. In that case, using GA4, you can define different user group, and by comparing the LTV of these different user group, you can identify some high potential segment and then optimize your marketing toward those users. So just to give you an example, under this retention reports, you will find this lifetime value reports. So if you look at this graph on the right, from day one. So day one basically is the install date. From the install date, as the time progresses, you can see the aggregated LTV of the user in average. So by hover over to this line, you kind of get the LTV of the different date range. So you can get what is the average D30 LTV, or what is the average D60 LTV, and 90, and on and on. So this will help you gauge what is the average LTV look like for my user. But here you might be wonder, like, how LTV calculated for GA4. So it's combination of different revenue stream. So first is to include in-app purchase events or the e-commerce purchase events. So when you implement the SDK, Firebase SDK, if you include these events and also with the values, this can be added to the LTV calculations. And another layer is the advertising revenue. So not many fintech players are monetizing with advertising, but if you do, and if you are using ad mode, we're automatically pulling the daily estimated revenue and then reflect that to LTV. And if you're using other monetization platform like MoPub or ironSource, there's additional implementation step required. But if you have done that, we can also pull the revenue from other sources. So LTV that GA4 defined is combination of multiple data stream with the revenue value. So with that, we have the average LTV of the user. Now we're applying multiple different segments. So earlier I mentioned GA4 offered this very handy way to define the segment. So using this segment panel, just give you an example, you might wonder which age group is bringing the highest value users. So compared to all user, which is the average, you define different user group as a segment. So for this example, you define age from 25 to 34 as the segment, and then you compare the LTV of these two groups. So compared to average user, you can notice that this age group between 25 and 34 is bringing the higher value user, which is the good sign that you now know which age group is bringing high value users, so that you can optimize your marketing message toward those users. So you can apply this practice with different age group, or the gender, or the country and city and all that. And there's another example of the country cut. So you compare the average user versus specific country or specific city to see which group is bringing the higher value users. So by comparing this multiple set of the user, you find which group is the high value user group, and then you optimize your campaign around those users. And then when you segment the user, I mentioned about the age, gender, and country, and the city, all these dimensions. So earlier I mentioned about user property that Firebase automatically captures. So those property is applied as a dimension for the reporting. So you can use all these property information as a filter to define the segment. So you can play around with all these different segments to slice and dice your data. And the second use case is about new users. So earlier I mentioned marketer has to prove the marketing budget that I spend is valuable. So this will answer the question like the new users are valuable. What is the benefit these new users are bringing to my app in terms of like active user or the revenue? And also what is the purchase pattern look like for the users? This can also be answered through the GA4 by using this new user versus existing user comparison. So automatically, as a part of the auto-collected user property, Firebase define the new user and existing user automatically. So new user is the user who opened the app within the last 7 days, meaning this user it's less than 7 days old. And the established user is basically the user beyond 7 days. So by comparing these two groups, you can kind of check what is the new user behavior look like. So I'm going to show you one example of the active user trend. So looking at this example, the graph, the good thing to note for this new total user, active user volume, it went up by 15%. So that's very healthy. But then what you notice at the end of the chart, it's going down by end of the period that you selected. And with this total user active user trend, you can also compare that with a new user active user graph. So if you look at this new user graph, you can notice that the drop came even more significantly. So what this is telling us is because of the new user acquisition drop, it's impacting on the total user, active user volume. So this means without having consistent investment of the new user acquisition, it will impact on your total active user volume. And also, you might wonder who are the marketing channel to bring these users. So by looking at this lifecycle report under user acquisition, you can get a sense like who are the major channel to bring the new users. And also you can compare those different user groups by channels. So here you might be wonder where the user channel get tagged. So Google, you see Google and Direct and Google Play. So if you're using the third-party attribution, not all the channel will be tagged, but we will be able to tag some of the channel that are linked server to server, including Google and Google Play organic users, and all other paid channel is likely to fall into the direct. So here, what you can and what you can do on the revenue side. So what you can do using this Explore menu, using this free form, you basically check the total revenue contribution by new user and established user. So what you can find sometimes very surprising is looking at your total revenue, the new user contribution to the revenue is even higher than the established user. So if you find that, this will again emphasizing the importance of the investment for the new user acquisitions. And also look at the purchase pattern. If we look at the recording purchase pattern, the first-time purchaser definitely the largest volume. This again means the new user bringing the high revenue. And also you can see what is the recording purchase cycle, like within a day or within 7 days, 30 days, and more 90 days. So it's healthier to have more user on the shorter recurring purchases, meaning they're making purchase more frequently. So if you see some large volume of the purchase coming in delay, we can also think about adding the re-engagement campaign to your marketing strategy. So by having all these different marketing channel, we can also look at how important of the new acquisition is for your overall marketing. The third part for the use case is comparing different channel and also the campaign level. This will help you answer, is paid user valuable even more than the organic user? Or is Google as an acquisition channel bringing the high quality user? Or if you're using different optimization options, you can check if this advanced optimization is bringing the high value users. So just give you some of the example. So here I added slide to show how Google GA4 is tagging this different channel. Earlier, I briefly mentioned it can tag some of the channel, but not all, because you're using the third-party tracking tool when you manage the campaign. But we can capture some of the channel like Google or the organic or Apple search ad or other paid channel will fall into direct. So here is the example how you can compare the Google acquired user versus the organic. So if you go to the comparison menu and the segment panel, you can use this first user source as the segment, and then you can choose the Google as a one segment and also Google Play as another segment to compare against to see if the Google is bringing the high value user compared to the organic or not. Another way is to deep dive more in the campaign level. So within Google campaign, you have a multiple different campaign going on. So automatically, this will show you all running Google campaign. You will see the exact campaign name show up here. So what you can do, you can basically group the campaign or choose one campaign to compare against each other. So one of the use case, you can compare action optimization campaign to install optimization campaign to see if the action campaign is bringing the high value user. And what do you mean by high value user? You can check the retention. If the user you bring in through the Google or a specific campaign is coming in healthy retention. And also, again, you can compare the LTV of those different groups to make sure they're bringing the high value users. So I quickly introduced some of the use case, how you can understand LTV to understand which are the segment that you should invest more. And also check the new user contribution to your business on the active user way and also the revenue. And lastly, deep diving on the campaign level or the channel level to see if they're bringing the high value users. So again, this is not limited to these three cases. I want you to explore other use cases that meets your business. All right, so in this section, I cover what is Firebase and also introduce the GA4, which is more advanced analytics suite that marketer can leverage, and also show you some of the examples that you can also apply. So for this audience, after the session, if you already have a Firebase implemented, I will recommend activating this GA4 analytics suite, which is free, to explore the features and find some new user insights. All right, so this is the end of the session 1. Thanks for listening, and I will get back to you on the second section to cover Firebase for FinTech. Thank you. All right, moving to the second section, Firebase for FinTech. In this section, I want to touch on how we can acquire more high-value users. So in the agenda, first I'm going to cover why use Firebase for fintech players, and touched on two advanced options of the Google campaign, which is the TCPA and also the TROAS. First of all, the mobile industry is changing into more privacy-safe practices. One of the examples that we all know is the recent change of the iOS 14, the ATT prompt. It's great for users, but it makes marketers' life more difficult to do more accurate measurement and also to do more personalized marketing. So to support on this situation, we're encouraging client you to use the first-party data, and Firebase is part of that practice. So by combining your first-party data with the Google data, we can optimize the campaign, and also we can basically overcome those challenges of limited data. And also, it even gives the benefit of the performance. So one of the core benefits of using this GA4 for your campaign is the performance benefit. So if you use the GA4 signal, you can have the faster ramp up. And also behind the algorithm, we're applying this automated similar users, meaning the better signal, better signs to the machine so that it can optimize better and also the faster. And we've been introducing this Firebase bidding for almost past year. And then we now have collected enough data, more than enough data to show you the proof. And this is one of the benchmarks that we released recently. So what this is basically saying is without no change in cost per conversions, meaning there's no change in CPI or no change in CPA, we're still able to deliver 13% more of the install volume and then 20% more of the post-install events when you bid with the Firebase signals. And here's one example from this company, Dean. This is the investment app from Mexico. So the main objective for this client is to look for the young professional. However, as I mentioned, in this privacy-safe world, it's a bit difficult to target those specific set of the user. And also, even if they can do, because it's too specific, the campaign is hard to scale. So they flip their mindset to go for performance and scale instead of the specific targeting, meaning they no longer limit their marketing to the specific target, but they will scale the campaign as long as they have the right performance coming along. So with this approach, using the Firebase signal, they are able to increase their user volume significantly. So they drove more than 300K installs. This is basically 2x increase of the month-over-month user base. And also, more important is the 300% of the conversion in their businesses. Another good example is this Starling Bank. So this client has been bidding with third-party signals, but then they switched their bidding to GA4. So by switching the signal to GA4, the automatic similar audience earlier that I mentioned applied into the algorithm, which boosts up the optimizations and lead to this 21% of the install conversion volume, and at the same time, the reduction of the CPA. So this is the benefit that you can get by simply switching your bidding with the GA4. Also, our upcoming improvement on our app campaign will be around this richer signal that is coming from the GA4. And also some of the features that we are offering is limited to GA4 only, meaning these features are only available when you are using the GA4. And some of the example is the TROAS and also audience exclusions. So not just the immediate performance uplift. If you are thinking Google as the marketing partners, our all future production will be around this new Firebase signals. So think about adopting this even for the future utilization of the Google. And one last thing that I want to mention about why Firebase for FinTech is this offline measurement. So Firebase offered this offline measurement protocol so that we can capture those events beyond apps. So what I often find talking to the FinTech clients, their core KPI events, for example, like loan business, the final loan dispersal happen offline because they have to check the credit line from different sources and all that. So it cannot be captured with the app. So to close the gap, we offer this measurement protocol where you can connect those offline signals into the app so that you can use that signal, core KPI event signal, for the campaign optimizations. So this is worth considering, especially your business, the core KPI event happen outside of the app. So moving to the next section of advanced bidding, TCPA. So in short, TCPA campaign is to find the new user who complete a specific action after the installation. And this campaign is optimized toward this target CPA, cost per actions. And when you optimizing the campaign, you need to choose the event that you want to optimize with. And then of course, it's good to look at your user journey to identify which event is good to optimize with. One of the good tips that I want to give you is look for your user journey and then see which event fall into this 15 to 30% conversion from the installations. That's the good range of the events that you can use for the action campaign. However, it will be good if you have all those events already implemented on the SDK, but sometimes your SDK has a very small event that you can utilize. And if you want to add additional event, that's another round of the implementation, meaning new coding, new updates, and all that. It's a lot of complications. So in order to help on that challenge, we offer this new feature, which is the audience trigger. So audience trigger, in short, is the way to implement the event without touching the SDK. So this is the codeless way of creating the events. So you can do so by defining the behavior. So here is the steps at the bottom left. So first step is to create the audience. So I can give you an example. So we want to trigger the event, the user who made more than 3 app visits in the first day of the install. So we define that audience. And if we set the audience trigger, meaning when the user fall into the condition that you define, it will synthetically trigger the event and record the events. And this event will perform exactly as same as the other SDK events, so that you can import this event to the Google Ads and optimize the campaign. So without touching the SDK, you can define different behavior as the events using the audience trigger. Then you can optimize the campaign and test out. So this is a great way that you can test out different events for the action campaign. So this is the UI of the audience trigger. So this happened under this audience menu. And under audience menu, you basically define the audience based on behavior. And by clicking this audience trigger menu on the right panel, and then you name the events. So once you do that, from that moment that you created this audience trigger, when user fall into the condition, it will log the events. And under event menu, you will see this new named event that you create on the audience trigger so that you can import and optimize with it. So that's the audience trigger feature that you can explore if you have the Firebase. And here's one example use case. This is not finance case, but one gaming client case. But you can find it, you can see the use case of the audience trigger to get an idea how this can be applied to your business. So what this client does using audience trigger, I highlight here, they made this warthog event more than 10 times in 7 days as a condition, and then they trigger the event. And using that event, they optimize their campaign, and as a result, they were able to increase the in-app purchase volume by 160%, and also their ROAS has improved by 68%. So just by, without touching SDK, they implement this new set of events and then optimize to find success. So I will recommend, if you're already targeting with the action campaign, explore this option to test out different events to optimize the campaign. And the last part is the TROAS. So TROAS is so far the most advanced app campaign options that we offer. So what it does is maximize in-app action at a target ROAS. So basically, it's helping you to reach your ROAS goal. And then this optimization is all done at back end. You just need to define what is the ROAS goal that you are looking for. And then one thing to highlight, this TROAS option is exclusively offered with the GA4 signals. So it cannot be run with the third-party signals. So how this works differently from TCPA. So this is likely to complete a selected in-app action, but this in-app action has to come with the value, so that this machine can wait if it's low value or the high value, and then optimizing toward the high value in-app actions. So here, who is the right fit for this TROAS event? And then I think it's aligning with what fintech players are looking for. So this is when the in-app event or the purchase event that you offer is coming in wide range. So thinking about investment, there are investors who use very small fund or the budget, whereas there are the client with the bigger budgets. And also for the loan players, personal loan, there are small amount loan and there are bigger amount loan. So the range of the offering is wide. So that's what fintech business is. And also fintech players are, as you, are looking for high value user and going for the ROAS. And lastly, the customers who monetize the transaction. So it will be ideal to run TROAS if you have this revenue related events like purchase or loan disbursed, or the transaction trade happens. Like any event that comes with the value, if you have that, you can run this TROAS. So for example, some of the client who has this value attached event happening server side. So earlier I mentioned about measurement protocol. So you can use those protocol to pull those revenue attached event, and then you can optimize toward TROAS. And this is the UI of the TROAS campaign. So the key difference here is when we set the target, we're setting the ROAS target. Is it like 100% by X day, or is it 200% by Y day? So you can set based on the ROAS target. So it's very purpose-oriented way of the targeting. So lastly, this is one good example which leverage all the advanced option that we offer. I want all the fintech players to aim for this type of practice in the future. So this client, Credible, is the buy now, pay later business in Indonesia. They have a very large pool of the user, over 4 million. So what they did is using multiple products. You can see on the right-hand side, upper corner, where the product was utilized. So initially, their buy now, pay later business, the core KPI event, like purchase or the paying back for the loan is happening offline, basically outside of the app. So instead of pulling those events directly, what they apply is building this predictive lifetime value events. So they build their own predictive model to pass back the user value to the Google Ads, the Firebase. And then use this predictive value using this TROAS campaign to run and optimizing for the ROAS. But on the top of that, they also apply this exclusive feature of the Firebase, which is the audience exclusion. So they filter out the reinstaller to even refine their targeting. So by combining all these three practices together, they were able to deliver the ROAS 36% higher ROAS than their target ROAS they set at the campaign level. But what's more interesting is when they compare the performance compared to the TCPA campaign. So compared to the TCPA campaign, they were able to drive the high predictive LTV, meaning they acquire higher value user with this practice compared to TCPA. And also they increased the pay later approval rates by 9% compared to the TCPA acquired user, meaning these users they acquired through this campaign is more higher quality, meaning they more convert to the approval. So looking at this practice, this includes multiple Firebase features into the practice. But by leveraging all these, they were able to drive better ROAS and also acquire high-value users. So this is one of the ultimate example that we can all aim for in the future in partnership with Google. So we went over a few benefits of the Firebase for fintech businesses. As a starting line, I would recommend implementing all meaningful events with the GA4 and optimize with it. Then consider more advanced options like measurement protocols to capture the core KPI event that's happening outside of the app, and also TCPA using the audience trigger. And lastly, the TROAS, which is exclusively available with Firebase. All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you.